Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the incredibly complex and, honestly, fascinating world of crude oil. We're going to map out exactly how this resource physically moves across the globe, how it shapes our economies, and ultimately, how it powers our everyday lives. It's a huge system, so let's jump right in. Think about the last time you filled up your car. It's a simple, everyday act, right? We literally do it without a second thought. But if you instantly zoom out from that gas pump, that single action connects you to a massive global web. See, oil provides over 90% of all global transportation energy. 90%. It is the absolute lifeblood of global movement. But here's where things get really wild. Look at this geographic mismatch. The United States is the undisputed heavyweight champion of oil production right now, churning out 21% of the entire global supply. But it sits on only 3% of the world's proved reserves. This massive, uneven distribution, that right there is what creates such profound geopolitical dependencies worldwide. So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the global energy mismatch, move to upstream, then midstream, downstream, and finally wrap up with economics, risk, and the general outlook. All right, starting off with part one, the global energy mismatch. Let's look at where this oil actually sits. Before we map it all out, what actually makes a random puddle of oil underground a proved reserve? Well, based on the McKelvey diagram framework, a resource only becomes a reserve when it is economically recoverable at current prices using current technology. Basically, if prices suddenly drop, or if extraction tech is just way too expensive, those reserves effectively vanish from the books. They're still in the ground, sure, but they aren't reserves anymore. Looking at the data from 2024, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and Iran hold the top spots. The really crucial takeaway here is that over 70% of the world's proved reserves are concentrated in OPEC nations. That extreme concentration, it's pretty much the engine of global geopolitical tension. Moving right along to Section 2, upstream, or what I like to call Earth's pressure cooker. Every single drop of oil was born in what is essentially a planetary pressure cooker. We are talking about ancient marine microorganisms, think algae and plankton, that died, were buried, and were subjected to intense geological heat and pressure over tens to hundreds of millions of years. Plate tectonics literally determined where the cooker was turned on, which is exactly why we find oil where we do today. But not all oil comes out of that cooker looking or acting the same. Crude is actually classified by a few main traits. First up is API gravity, which is just density. Is it light and flows like vegetable oil, or is it heavy, like thick molasses? Second is sulfur content. Is it sweet, meaning low sulfur, or sour? Light, sweet crude is considered the industry's absolute gold standard, simply because its low density makes it incredibly easy and cheap to refine into high-demand fuels like gasoline. Which brings us to Section 3, midstream, the global arteries. Just to keep our bearings here, remember this whole thing is a three-step journey. Upstream extracts the oil, downstream refines it, but the midstream, the transportation via massive tankers and pipelines, is the vital bridge between the two. About half of the world's entire crude oil supply is traded internationally, meaning it has to navigate this highly complex midstream phase. Out of all that exported crude, a staggering 96% travels on water. And the shipping industry uses a very strict color-coded distinction for this. Clean tankers only carry refined products, while dirty tankers haul the unrefined raw crude oil. They literally never mix the two. The raw crude is transported on these massive vessels called very large and ultra-large crude carriers. Guys, some of these ships are as long as the Empire State Building is tall. It's wild. Once we're overland, the logistics completely shift. Pipelines are by far the cheapest overland method. In the U.S. alone, a vast network of over 200,000 miles of pipelines carries 90% of all domestically transported crude. It's this massive, practically invisible network running right beneath our feet, which, by the way, is also how the U.S. brings in the vast majority of its oil imports from Canada. Okay, let's jump back to the water for a second, because I have a statistic that is just mind-blowing. 20%. Under normal conditions, the equivalent of 20% of the entire world's crude oil supply passes through one single, narrow maritime choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. Because that choke point is so unbelievably narrow, it is highly vulnerable to any geopolitical conflict. For example, during the U.S.-Israel war with Iran, Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz to the U.S. and its allies caused the largest disruption in global oil supply in history. It just goes to show how one single choke point closure can critically wound all of global trade. All right, let's look at Section 4, downstream, the custom kitchens. We need to bust a pretty big myth right here. You absolutely cannot just dump any random crude oil into any refinery. Refineries are essentially complex custom kitchens. They are highly optimized facilities that require extremely specific recipes of raw ingredients, and that's based entirely on that density and sulfur content we talked about earlier. And this leads to a brilliant, completely counterintuitive strategy. While the U.S. produces a massive amount of its own light crude, 70% of its refining capacity actually runs most efficiently on heavier crudes. So what do? U.S. refiners buy imported heavy oil, largely coming down from Canada, and they physically blend it with their own domestic light oil to create the absolute perfect recipe. This maximizes refinery efficiency, which ultimately impacts the exact prices you and I pay at the pump. And finally, Section 5, economics, risk, and outlook. When you hear oil prices on the evening news, they are usually talking about benchmarks like Brent and West Texas Intermediate, or WTI. These act as the pulse of the entire market. They instantly react to supply disruptions, extreme weather, and decisions by OPEC+ to either restrict production to raise prices or flood the market to push out competitors. To combat all this crazy volatility, nations use tools like the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. These are millions of barrels stored deep underground in massive salt caverns, and they act as an emergency shock absorber for the global market. But hey, it's not just about the economics. There are steep environmental costs baked into the system. Upgrading heavy Canadian crude emits up to 4.5 times more greenhouse gas than conventional crude. And it leaves behind major environmental challenges, like massive, toxic tailings ponds from oil sands mining. Plus, those midstream dirty tankers, they traditionally burn high-sulfur bunker fuel. However, it's not all bad news. The IMO 2020 regulations successfully forced a huge drop in allowable sulfur for ship fuels, causing a nearly 10-fold drop in sulfur emissions. It's a great proof point that this massive system actually can adapt to better regulations. Despite that adaptation, the whole system remains incredibly fragile. When a midstream choke point breaks down, it wrecks everything. Add in the very real physical risk of a globally aging tanker fleet hauling all this oil, and disruptions compound super fast. Recently, Middle East producers were forced to cut 10 million barrels a day just because their physical storage filled up. When that happens, global prices surge, which immediately impacts the economic health of downstream consumers everywhere, drastically raising the risk of a recession. So all of this leaves us with one massive question. We've seen the sheer scale and the deep, deep vulnerabilities of the journey of crude oil. As geopolitical conflicts continue to rise and environmental regulations get tighter, how will this incredibly fragile, interconnected system adapt to fuel our future? Thanks so much for diving into this explaining with me, and keep questioning how our world works.